very kind introduction. Let me begin by saying what a great honour and pleasure it is to have been invited to deliver this third James Crawford lecture. Now that's a completely formulaic beginning for such an event, but my delight is very real and specific. I was thinking, I have told James this already, but I remember very clearly my first meeting with James. It was when I was a very ambitious MOOC student in early 1980, and James was the coach of the Adelaide team then. I realised since that he was only been a few years older than me, that he was already a professor and appeared to have come from another planet in terms of his savvy and sophistication. Ever since that first meeting, I, like so many others, have been the beneficiary of his great encouragement and generosity of spirit. Anyone who comes within James's orbit, which is just so encompassing. We were at a meeting in Canberra yesterday, and everybody there had been blessed quite in some way as a student or as a friend. But one is very quickly enveloped, not only by his great learning, his quick and often, I can say, I think sometimes ferocious intelligence, but it's also tended by his great sense of humour and his very warm friendship. I remember actually when I was thinking about applying for the job here at Adelaide many years ago, I felt first of all perhaps it was out of my league to apply for a job like this. And I remember consulting James, who was then dean at Sydney Law School, and said, look, should I really apply for a job like that? And I sort of jumped up to tender. And he gave me some very good advice, which I pass on to him and I pass on to all of you here. He said, well, you should only apply for a job if you could manage, if you were turned down for the job. So apply for it if you're quite capable of coping if you don't get it. And I think that was great advice. I did apply, and very fortunately I got it. I was thinking about James in Sydney yesterday when I heard him speaking in Canberra to a group of government lawyers, and he spoke on such a huge range of topics, from the fragmentation of international law to law of the sea to international investment arbitration to human rights. And once again I marvelled at his extraordinary breadth of knowledge in so many areas of international law, and he brings to them the acute observational powers of an academic and a practitioner. It's also, I should say, a great pleasure to be back here at the University of Adelaide, where I spent an incredibly happy 3 years, and I'm thrilled to see a number of really beloved colleagues from that time. Adelaide, I think, occupies quite a special place in the discipline of international law in Australia, because it's been the intellectual home of luminaries such as Dan O'Connell, Ivan Shearer, who I'm thrilled to see here tonight, and James Crawford, and then the next generation, Judith Garden and Luke Whitford, who's also here tonight. Well, James said to me yesterday when I met him in Canberra rather earnestly, what were you thinking of? Nobody had actually mentioned my topic. I had. And he said, well, I'll probably not be anything unless it's the finer points of art and space law. So he was very relieved that I wasn't going to address those topics. So to pay tribute to James's great contribution to international law at the global and local level, I've chosen as my text for the lecture tonight his work on democracy in international law, which was the articles he's written, which were really he wrote them in the last decade of the 20th century. And I want to use some of James's ideas to shed some light on contemporary dilemmas about democracy, especially those that have arisen in the wake of the invasion of Iraq. I'm going to be interested in questions such as, does international law support democracy? Should it? And what conceptions of democracy are used in international law? And I want to argue that international law needs to develop a much richer and less programmatic understanding of democracy than that encouraged use internationally. Well, international institutions have typically been very wary of the notion of democracy. So if you go through the UN Charter adopted in 1945, you don't see the term democracy there at all. Membership of the organisation is rather open to all, and the term of peace-loving state. This requirement was originally intended to disqualify governments with a fascist history from the United Nations, particularly Spain. The San Francisco Conference, that drafted the UN Charter in 1945, agreed that the term peace-loving was not synonymous with democratic institutions, because it was thought this would constitute interference in the domestic affairs of states. The Western powers, however, later tried to invoke, unsuccessfully, the peace-loving conditions to oppose the admission of Bulgaria, Hungary and Romania to the UN on the basis that they were not democratic governments. But that was an unsuccessful move. The next time these issues became discussed was during the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1947 and 1948. And there was among the drafting committees for that declaration some explicit discussion of democracy with much contention about the best form of government to protect human rights. And the final outcome of that was Article 21 of the Universal Declaration, which proclaims that, and I'm quoting from it here, anyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. And another paragraph states, the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections. Now those terms of Article 21 reincorporated into the 1966 International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights in a slightly amended form. And so it gives every citizen the right and the opportunity to vote and to be elected at genuine periodic elections, which shall be by universal and equal suffrage and shall be heard by secret ballot. So that's where we've got through in terms of the international law framework. Another treaty